Hey guys, Hamsterwheel here with a new video, and today I'll be talking about a little server called OmegaWoW. You see, I've been playing here for a few weeks now, and after doing a fair chunk of the content here, I figured I'd share my thoughts on the server and tell you what it's like. So first off, let's talk about what this server is. OmegaWoW is a Wrath of the Lich King server with slightly increased rates. Experience is set to 3 times, with 6 times if you use the recruit a friend tool. Reputation and honor is doubled, and the chance for world items dropping is also set to 3 times. It went live a few weeks ago, so it's still quite fresh, and as of right now, it only has Season 5 and Next Rammus open, which means you're not going to walk around in Dalaran as a fresh 80 and be surrounded by people decked in heroic ICC gear, which is kinda nice. It's also important to know that they do have a cash shop, but only for vanity items like pets and mounts. Although one thing that you can buy, which some people might not really like, is the increased XP rate that you would normally get by recruiting a friend, except now you just get that XP boost for yourself for 7 days. Alright then, let's talk about the leveling. So I started leveling on the server from day 1. I even streamed the launch when it went live, and I was pleased to see that the launch itself went quite smooth. I don't think I recall any long period of time where the server was shut down, and I believe they only had a very occasional disconnect or two, which could have also been on my end and not the server. So leveling with the 3 times rate made for a nice pace, and it was one of the reasons why I decided to check the server out. As much as I love Gamer District, the 1 times rate, which is now 2 times, was a bit too low for me. The only problem with this 3 times experience rate initially was that you could barely afford any spells from level 1 to around 40, which meant being forced to train just a few of them every time you went back to your class trainer. Luckily the staff at OmegaWoW is very active, and based on the people's feedback, they now reduce the cost of spells so that you don't have to gimp yourself, which is nice. Now during leveling, I have to say that I ran into enough people to make the server feel alive, though I'll talk about that a bit more later in this video. It was nice to have the occasional RDF popping, and the dungeon itself was scripted quite nicely, with barely any bugs that I noticed myself. Though it has to be said that with the 3 times leveling rate, it is faster to just quest over and over again. So while we're on the topic of questing, I also barely ever ran into any problems there. I don't think I can remember a single quest that I couldn't complete due to bugs or anything of the sort, which was definitely a good foreshadowing the server. So, all in all, leveling was quite enjoyable. The pace is a little bit faster, which means you breeze through the content, but it's still low enough rate where you do have to do a fair amount of quests before moving on to the next zone. That and the increased world drop increases the chance of some decent greens and blues dropping for your character that compensates for that higher leveling rate. Finally, the scripting when it came to leveling was quite nice. Even more complicated quests like the Sons of Hodor questline went without any major issues, so we're off to a good start. Alright, so once I hit level 80 it was time for some normal dungeons. And seeing how I'm a Moonkin as main spec, I decided to get dual spec to be able to queue as a healer in dungeons, and I'm glad I can, as DPS always has to wait much longer for a queue to pop. Gearing up in these normal dungeons was quite easy, mainly because the double reputation rate makes it much quicker for you to get honored, revered, or even exalted with certain factions to get yourself some level 80 blues and an epic item or two. Once I had enough gear to queue heroics, it was time to do that. So far I believe I've run every single heroic dungeon that Wrath of the Lich King has in this state. And again, I'm very pleased with the way these dungeons work. I don't think I've spotted any major bugs in these dungeons, and all the abilities, dialogue, and whatnot seems in order. I also like the fact that because the server is quite fresh, heroic dungeons are still a bit of a challenge as no one has insanely overpowered gear. Sure, it's nothing like the old days of the Burning Crusade, cause most of the trash in these heroic dungeons is just a bit of an AoE fest, but having done a fair amount of dungeons as a healer, I always had to be on point with the healing. So when it comes to dungeons, OmegaWoW gets a thumbs up here as well. Now when it comes to raids, I haven't really done a whole lot as of right now. So far I've only checked out the Vault of Argavon and Obsidian Sanctum, and both those raids work like a charm. Of course the main thing when it comes to raids right now is Next Rammus. I've said it before, but I'm probably not going to raid here, as raiding Naxxramas on vanilla gaming soaks up a lot of time. But from what I've heard, the staff has, based on the feedback of their players, altered the numbers in Naxxramas to make it a bit more challenging than it normally is. I've talked to a few players on the server, and some say that things like patchwork are quite rough. It's almost like they're hitting a brick wall, so it seems like Naxxramas on the server offers players a proper challenge, which is good to see. And for now, that's really all I can cover when it comes to raids. So let's talk about PvP real quick. Again, I'm not that huge on PvP in Wrath of the Lich King, but what I did do was Winter Grasp, as I really enjoy that battleground. It kinda gives me some Ultrarach Valley vibes, which to this point is still my favorite battleground ever. Anyway, Winter Grasp has a lot of stuff that needs to work properly, like the towers, vehicles, and whatnot. And once again, I'm happy to say that everything here seems in order, including the true Blizz-like experience of people still not getting that you shouldn't build catapults. And then we get to the part that a lot of people are interested in, the population. So as of right now, the server is hovering at around 800 to 1000 people playing, depending on what time you play. The number is probably a bit lower if you play in the States, and a bit higher if you live in the EU. So while that might not be ideal, or make for a very busy world like Nostalrius for instance, it is enough to support the server and make it feel active. Sometimes the leveling zones felt a bit barren, but there were also plenty of encounters that I remember during leveling with other players where we teamed up and did some quests together. Things like the Dungeon Finder pop quite regularly, though to be fair, I'm queuing as a DPS and a healer, so that happens a lot quicker for me. But when I do those heroic dungeons, I always get a mix of other people joining, so it's not like only 10 people are queuing heroics at any given time. The server also has a few raiding guilds, so it's nice to see some active guilds here trying to progress through the content, which also helps in making the server feel alive. And then we get to the conclusion of what I think of the server so far. Well, right now I've gotten my character to level 80, did a fair amount of dungeons, got myself some epics including 2 pieces of tier 7, and I've done things like Vault of Archivon, Obsidian Sanctum, and Winter Grasp. So, would I recommend the server? Well, let me put it this way. If you're looking for a fresh Wrath of the Lich King server, you like the idea of having slightly higher rates, and you don't mind them having a cash shop, then yes, absolutely. So far I've had a lot of fun here, and while the population could be better, there's plenty of stuff going on to keep you occupied. All in all, the OmegaWoW team have made a solid server and gathered a decent player base, which, in a sea of Wrath of the Lich King servers, is not too shabby if you ask me. And that's pretty much it for now. If you like the idea of the server, I'll be sure to put a link to their website in the video description below. And, as always, I want to thank you for watching this video. I'm Hamsterwheel, and have a good one.